All right, worship musician training. This is part 4, part 3. We've talked about note values, time signatures, and here in part 3 of rhythm, we are going to talk about rhythmic solfege. So rhythmic solfege, it's the same concept as harmonic solfege, do, re, mi. Each note in the scale gets a syllable. For rhythmic solfege, each note in the measure, which is to say each chord note, each beat, and each subdivision, those all get their own syllables as well. Since there are two different kinds of time signature, simple time and compound time, we have to have two separate syllables. Like you can't use the major scale solfege for the minor scale. You have to use the minor scales solfege. Well, it's the same thing for simple and compound time. You have to use simple time solfege for simple meter and compound time solfege for compound meter. Meter and time signature are the same thing, by the way. Right. So, starting off with the simple time signature, well, actually to start with is the beat, right? So for the beat, the syllable that you use for the beat across simple and compound time signature, the beat is always ta. Let me write that here. So the beat is ta. The beat is always ta. So for simple time, we divide that subdivision. We usually just divide it into 4 parts. This is where solfege has its limitations, is that for the syllables, you can't really go below the 16th note without altering your use of the solfege, basically. So this equates to 4 16th notes in a single beat in simple time. Ta, which is the downbeat. D is the upbeat. So ta, di, ta, di, ta, di, ta, di, down, up, 1 and 2 and ta, di, right? And in between the down and the upbeat, there are the other subdivisions. You may be familiar with counting 1 E and a, 2 E and a, 3 E and a, which is basically a kind of solfege. Counting system for rhythm. Here it's a little bit different. It's ta, ka, di, mi. So the downbeat, the upbeat, and the subdivisions in between. So takadimi, 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 1 E and a, 2 E and a, 3 E and a, 1 E and a, right? So there's simple time solfege. Takadimi. The compound time solfege is the other one that we use. And since we have to, in compound time, divide the beat into 3 even parts, we no longer have an upbeat, even though we still have some of the same syllables. We still have ta and we still have di as syllables in the compound, but they don't mean the same thing as they do in simple time solfege. In compound time solfege, 3 subdivisions of the beat. And here we have the same thing, a compound beat divided up in this case it would be 16th notes, I guess. If it is a dotted quarter note as our beat, divides into 6 16th notes, and that is tava, ki, di, dama. So the 3 subdivisions is ta, ki, da, takida, 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 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and right, or 1 and 2 and 1 and 2 and for 6/8 time. So 1 and takida, and then you have the subdivisions in between the, di, ma, takadimi, takadimi. That's another thing about compound time, is that after you get past that initial hurdle of dividing the main beat into 3 subdivisions, the notes divide normally, as they normally do, in half. So after the subdivision divides into 3 parts, they divide into 2 parts after that. So we have, there's our first subdivision, second subdivision, third subdivision. This starts to make sense the more you do it, the more different ways you consume lectures and lessons and just talking about time signature and playing with time signature and using it. YouTube is, again, a great resource. And throughout this whole series, there's been resources in the description down below for you to check out for each topic that we've been talking about. Okay, so there is what we're working with. And it's kind of simple. Just like solfege for harmony, for scales, it's just a couple of syllables that we use in a very specific way. And the beat is always ta, T-A. Now let's take a look at some examples over here of how that looks and how that divides up into an actual measure of rhythm. So we have a bar of 2/4, which is simple time, and there's 2 beats, so it's simple duple. And here we have compound duple. 6/8 time. So I just used duple just because it's easier to fit it on the board. So we have our downbeats and upbeats. I've underlined those. So here's our 1 and 2 and I've written it out in 16th notes just as it is here. And this goes, you know, TAKADIMI, 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 TAKADIMI. And if this was a strumming pattern on the guitar, it'd be down, up, 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 1, 2, 1, 2, right? And for 6/8, there it is again. The subdivisions are underlined, 1 and of course we have further subdivisions between those. 1 and a takadimi, takadimi. There are 1,000 million, bajillion, infinite, nearly, different ways of combining note values into a bar to get a rhythm. I imagine it's almost infinite. Maybe not quite, but I don't know for sure. I guess it depends on if we set limitations on it. So 2/4 and 6/8, you can see how they're different. You can see how the beats and the subdivision divides with the syllables also. And now down here, I've written it as big as I could, is an example of one such example of a possible rhythm. I just wrote out a random rhythm in 4/4 time, and we're going to see how those syllables are useful. I have a dotted quarter note here, followed by an 8th note, a dotted 8th note with a 16th note, and that is how a dotted 8th and 16th note are written together. You can see there's the second flag for the 16th note right there. It only goes halfway across, does not go all the way across, because that dot right there is a 16th note, effectively. And then I have a triplet here, which is marked with a 3 right there. It's mixing the concepts of compound time into simple time, and if you want to know more about that, go learn about polyrhythms. This is a simple example of a polyrhythm. So how does this sound? How does it sound? 1, 2, 3, 4. Ta, di, ta, mi, ta. Sorry. 1, 2, 3, 4. Ta, di, ta, mi, ta, ki, da, ta. Di, ta, mi, ta, ki, da, ta. Right? You You can hear that triplet in there as well. And that triplet is using compound time solfege. Takida versus all this, which is TAKADIMI. Okay, so that's kind of quick and dirty, and it throws a few things at you. As far as stuff that you need to know, this is a little bit excessive, I think, but it really helps me. And it helps me think about rhythm, just like solfege helps you think about the major scale, or rather, how it helps you not think about the major scale. It just helps you do it, and that is what rhythmic solfege does for you. Once you learn it, once you get really good at it, then you can just compose rhythms, and you can be really creative with the rhythms that you can come up with, no matter what instrument you're playing.